just don't die. I think that was my number one rule as a startup. There's nothing easy and sexy about startup.
Did they understand that tech was coming?
From 0 to 1 is so difficult to get the ball moving.
Ultimately, you were acquired.
I didn't really have that option, again, because it was my life savings. A lot of good stories start with alcohol and failure. I'm going to show up and ask for the owners, show the owners what I have.
Show up, go to your customers, go to your prospects, and spend time with them.
I will not take no for an answer.
Welcome, everyone. Today, we are on Playbook. I'm with Adam Garfield, a Miami founder who figured out about mobile before it was obvious. Adam co-founded SpeedyTab in 2013 and grew it into one of the country's top digital ordering platforms and was acquired by Wix in 2021.
Yep.
At Wix, he became the VP of restaurants, where he led global product, engineering, and go-to-market for tens of thousands across almost 200 companies or countries, which is pretty wild. And now after 4 years operating at Wix, Adam is on to his next big opportunity. And we're sitting in studio today to talk about Adam, his story, his experiences, and get some tactical feedback on what it's like to grow big businesses. So welcome, Adam. Thanks for coming.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael, for having me.
So, we want to get a little bit started just about who you are, who's Adam Garfield, where you grew up, how you learned about entrepreneurship, what were some of the first forays in entrepreneurship, and a little bit about the first big, SpeedyTab story. Tell us a little bit about that in short.
Yeah. I like to joke that there's only 12 people actually born and raised in Miami, and we all know each other, and I'm one of the 12. So hopefully you can bring the 11 others on the show also. But born and raised in Miami, and eventually, after going to UF, go Gators, left and moved to Boston for a bit. And when I was in Boston, I was working in the hedge fund space. And when I was there, probably like a lot of 24-year-olds living in Boston, working in finance, it was the drunkest city in America.
Yeah, I lived in Boston at 24 in finance.
So you know that world. And
Yes.
so that was also like maybe a year or 2 years after Uber had just come out as an on-demand black town car service for Boston. And I felt like the opportunity to solve my own problem of waiting at the bar to get a drink and the frustration of having to close out your tab at the end of the day could be solved in the same way that Uber was solving rideshare, or at that time, black town car on demand. And for me, it was, I want to give you my money, merchant. Don't you want to take it as fast as you can? And at that time, everything was not digital payments, not digital commerce. It was, I am going to wait in a line and hand you my cash, my credit card, and then eventually you give me my good, and we'll be on our way. And I just felt like that was the most inefficient system possible. And so the first foray of SpeedyTab, and that's kind of where the horrible name comes from, is from that bar on-demand experience. And that failed miserably. Like I always say, a lot of good stories start with alcohol and failure. and that was where we started. And so that was the first foray. I left my job in Boston. I moved back to South Florida. I moved into Fort Lauderdale because I quit my job and I had no money at that time. I needed some place to live. And moved back here, and we started building SpeedyTab, myself and my co-founder at that time.
Love it. And what was the first drink you ordered on SpeedyTab?
It's funny that you asked that because our default drink was always just a $1 Bud Light. Like it was priced as $1. It was a Bud Light. And fast forward maybe to 2018 or sometime in the future, I remember we accidentally sent out push notifications to hundreds of thousands of users that their Bud Light was ready for pickup at the bar. This was obviously like in our staging environment, but somehow, we sent it out in production. But it's funny that you asked that because it just triggers this memory of 100,000 plus users all of a sudden getting a notification on their phone that their Bud Light is ready for pickup.
It's Bud Light has had some interesting marketing campaigns, and so that sounds like a good one to reach a good scale. I love it. So as you were getting started, you moved to Fort Lauderdale. You were building essentially in the mobile payment space, the drink space, commerce. What was things that the market saw about the space, and how was it being a young entrepreneur tackling, which is such a humongous opportunity? Like, how did you sit through it and really say, like, this is how we need to get started? What were like the first couple months and quarters like?
Yeah, I think for us, I mean, we were always very product focused as a company. I wanted everything that we built as a mobile first company to be in-house. That was our approach. And so I was really fortunate to find my co-founder that could lead our team to do that. In the beginning, it was just obviously myself and Ed. And so it took us, I'd say, a year plus to develop the first systems because it was pretty complex. If you think about it, you're building mission critical software for brands. This isn't a social media app that if it crashes has no repercussions other than your users getting frustrated. If this crashes or something goes wrong, you're exposing critical data, you're stopping merchants from earning revenue. There's major implications. And so the software we're creating was mission critical software. So, and it was not just a app for end consumers. We also had to build an app for the merchants. So at that time, we didn't have point of sale integrations or anything for orders to flow directly into systems. We're actually one of the first companies to do that. But we had to build an application for the merchant to receive orders. We had to build a notification system. We had to build inventory management, menu management, reporting, payments. I mean, I didn't pick the simplest, the simplest experience,
Robust.
the problem to solve. So it took some time to actually get that into market. And when we did, we kind of realized that, all right, well, we also picked really difficult logistical problem to solve there in the initial bar scene, which was, okay, well, where do you put these things? How do you handle people wanting to come in and get their order? How do you handle liabilities? And most of all, unless you're an alcoholic, you're not drinking at the bar every day.
Right.
But we saw that most Americans are caffeine addicts.
Right.
And they're getting coffee every day, multiple times a day sometimes.
Right.
And so we pivoted from alcohol in the bar to coffee and soon into food. And that was the first important pivot that SpeedyTab did.
I love that. And so when you did that pivot and you started talking to the coffee shops and the cafes and then the restaurants and food, like what were those conversations? Like how did the restaurant owners or cafe owners look at you? And, you know, did they understand that tech was coming? This is 2013, 2014, 2015, or, you know, because SaaS was starting to get popular, Salesforce.com, all these things. But Toast wasn't really a thing quite yet. So what was like the reaction your customers had to you as an entrepreneur and, you know, founder-led sales?
Great question. Is that everyone says first mover advantage has lots of great things about it. And it does. You have a lot of benefits. But the downside of first mover advantage is you're oftentimes teaching your customers how these things actually work. You know, people had no idea how order ahead, like it sounds trivial now, but Starbucks hadn't yet rolled out order ahead and pay. We beat, you know, we're months ahead of Starbucks going to allow customers to order ahead, skip the line and pay for their coffee and pick it up. So you actually have to train the merchant and the customers on how this concept works. So like if you're introducing this concept in 2020 or 2021 or today, people take it for granted. But it's the same thing if you think about when the drive-through was first invented, people didn't understand how the drive-through worked.
Totally.
They had to have signs that said, no, first you go to this window.
Right.
You tell them what you want. Then you go to this window, you pick up your food. You go in this direction. And it was the same thing with us. We had to teach merchants. No, people are actually going to order their coffee before they're on the premises. You're going to prepare it. You're going to place it in this part of your space. People will come directly here. They do not pass go. They do not pay $200. And they'll pick up their order and be on their way. So there was an entire learning experience of the merchant and the end consumer on this is how it's going to work. That being said, our first merchant was Panther Coffee.
Okay. Miami, Panther Coffee is a Miami institution. Definitely a good place to meet founders and investors. And it's great coffee. Wynwood, Sunset Harbor, all over.
Yeah. So in 2015, Panther Coffee was the place to be in town. What Blue Bottle was to San Francisco,
right.
Panther Coffee was to Miami.
Blue Bottle and Soma is Panther Coffee, Wynwood.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're a founder, you're an investor, you're a creative, you're anyone doing something cool, you're at Panther Coffee. And I knew that I wanted Panther Coffee to be our very first customer because at that time we started as a marketplace. We had more pivots after that, but we started as a marketplace. I knew that if we got Panther Coffee onto our platform, that would attract the consumers that we needed to come onto our platform. People talk about chicken and the egg. How do you attract both sides? I wanted to go after Panther as the leader on the business side. And that would attract everyone else, not just the consumers, but would attract the other restaurants that saw Panther as the leader in the space that would then come on after the fact.
And so you got Panther.
So I got Panther.
Okay.
It took, people think founder-led sales is easy and sexy. There's nothing easy and sexy about startups. Like everyone reads articles about, the 100 million ARR in 6 month story these days. There's a lot more stories that are, I had to work really hard to get the ball from 0 to 1 is so difficult to get the ball moving. And so for Panther, it was a matter of, I'm going to show up and ask for the owners, show the owners what I have, and I'm going to do that until I get them as a I will not take no for an answer.
I mean, I think it's a lesson even today and anything for entrepreneurs, but I still see entrepreneurs just rely on email and text message. It's like show up, go to your customers, go to your prospects and spend time with them, and people do business with people. And so what were some of the moments at the SpeedyTab journey where you started to see, okay, I got Panther, pivoted into cafes and coffee restaurants. Now I'm starting to really grow and scale. What was the point where you said, hey, I'm not like this early stage little business anymore, but now I'm a real business. I'm scaling. I have customers that are demanding with their own customers that need my product. And so maybe walk me through some of those moments. Where were you living? What was it like? What was life like at that time? Can you replicate that feeling?
Oh, two big inflection points. One was the next pivot that we had, which was from a marketplace to a white labeled B2B SaaS company. Mm-hmm. And so that was really where we became this Shopify for restaurants. Yep. So we went from our own brand front and center, our own marketplace, to being behind the scenes, the engine that runs the branded restaurant ordering, loyalty, analytic experience. And that came about because, again, of more failures. So we expand. So we get Panther. We get Koyo Taco, their neighbor, the other cool kid in town. We get everyone that's a great restaurant in Miami. We moved to expand to New York. Miami and New York ties as old as time. So
Six-borough.
Exactly. So we expand into New York, and we run into, all of a sudden, an explosion of Silicon Valley customer acquisition funded delivery companies.
Yep.
So you have Uber Eats, DoorDash, Postmates, Caviar. They're all coming out. They're all spending tons of money on customers. And we don't have that because I bootstrapped SpeedyTab with my life savings.
Wow.
And so we say, okay, we're running out of money here. Our customers are telling us, though, that instead of our name on everything, they wish they had their name on things. They don't want to tell their customers about SpeedyTab. They want to tell their customers about their own brand and their own messaging. And with third-party delivery now becoming more popular, they also don't want to pay high commissions. Right. And they also want access to the customer data and to be able to market directly to their customers. So that was when we pivoted the company to that B2B SaaS experience, branding everything we did, becoming the Shopify for restaurants. And that's what drove kind of the next leg up in our growth story. And
that moment when you started that pivot, you went into white labeling, started to do the B2B focus. What was those couple months like on the growth side, the sales side, noting that you had interesting venture-backed other companies in the space and you were bootstrapped? Did you think about needing to raise capital? Did you want to? How did you think about CAC? When you couldn't show up at every restaurant or coffee shop or customer, what was it like at that? I'm really scaling now, and this is big.
Yeah, I mean, a couple things. So the first thing is that, to be honest, nobody wanted to invest in a first-time founder that didn't go to Stanford or MIT, that was building at first a mobile ordering platform for restaurants.
Was that a Florida thing too, or was that a?
I went to other markets to raise money, and they did say, well, you should consider moving to San Francisco, or you should consider moving to Boston or New York. I never wanted to do that I never wanted to do that because if you, for example, Red Sea, Blue Sea, the
Yep.
book, right?
Yep.
I always felt I want to be in the blue sea. And to me, Miami is that blue sea. Why am I going to go to all these other markets where everyone is competing over the same talent when I can go be in Miami and recruit the best talent that I can here? And I'm not competing against, forget like the Mag 7 or whatever hot funded Silicon Valley startups there are. I want to be in my own market and be a leader here. And so that was why I felt Miami was so powerful at that time. And as a company that wasn't able to raise funds, that also allowed me to be that bootstrap founder that was now, generating revenue and being able to grow as a company, and do that here from Miami was a powerful thing.
So over the life cycle of SpeedyTab, you never raised outside capital?
We raised a small round
Small
in
round.
the early days, and then we raised some strategic funds later on, but we never did a proper.
Do you wish you would have been able to have that Series A capital that would have changed the trajectory or changed things, or is the bootstrap life worth the pain?
Yeah, to me, I mean, there's pros and cons to everything that you do, and I can look at all the failures that I had at SpeedyTab and see them through a different lens. For me, being bootstrapped gave us the flexibility to find success on our own timeline. I think the more capital you raise, the narrower your exit options are.
Yeah.
And so while that can accelerate growth, it can also accelerate death. So for us, I mean, I always tell new founders that's like, just don't die. I think that was my number one rule as a startup. I didn't really have that option, again, because it was my life savings. I refused to let the company die. But I was able to refuse to let the company die because, again, it was, only our money.
Right.
So we didn't have anyone else to really answer to in that regard.
I've been in the spend management business. It's interesting how people spend other people's money versus your own money. And so I look at CAC and ROI, and spending venture dollars, which is some institution or retirement fund or pensioners' money ultimately, versus your own, Adam Garfield's money. You're probably going to be really thinking a lot more about every little unit economic metric, every little piece of the business, and every dollar goes for I think cash out date is the number one thing board members should be thinking about. Is like, if you have a board, like, what is the last possible survival date I have? What month is it? T minus X months.
Yeah, we were forced to be very efficient with our use of capital. Absurdly strict. And
Anything
also
crazy you guys did with that? Like that was on like a outsider perspective, or absurd on how you use cash to get customers?
I would say the most efficient thing that we did really was from a product level. And so our team was always very small. I mean, we had, for most of the journey up until COVID pretty much, and that we can talk about that's impact. But for most of the journey, we had about 8 people at SpeedyTab. And so the way that we were able to get distribution was through channel partnership. And so one of the first product-led growth initiatives that we had was building integrations into leading cloud-based POS for restaurants. So what that looked like was, for instance, Toast was one of our first partners in integrations that we built, like 2017. This is early days of Toast, of integrations in general within the space. And we did that with Toast and with Square and with Revel and Bring.
Like Clover, there was like a few of those. Yeah.
Exactly. And so what that did was it then allowed us access within that partnership to get distribution across the country. Toast had an amazing sales force of people, boots on the ground across all 50 states, and we were leveraging them to sell our product. And it was really a win-win-win.
Totally.
That, I think in software, you really have to understand what can be a win-win-win for everyone.
Totally.
It was a win for Toast because they needed to close new customers on items that they couldn't provide them themselves, right? So in this case, branded app experience with mobile ordering and payments and loyalty all integrated into it. Anytime a customer would say they needed that from them, they would recommend us and refer us. Anytime a customer would come to us and say, we need a cloud-based POS that you integrate with, we would refer Toast. For the merchant, it's a huge win because they're not managing some separate iPad that they have to hire someone to go manage. We called it mission control. They would have like six. You remember these times you go into a restaurant, you see like 6 iPads.
They all have their each wire to it. Yeah.
Each one, it looks like, an engagement farm, right?
Right.
And we got rid of that. We went direct into the POS. And so that allowed us this efficiency from a sales perspective, from a customer acquisition perspective, to really have the power of a 400-person sales team while having 2 salespeople.
I love channel sales, and it's like such a good story. I think like I'd love to hear, before we move on to the next stage of SpeedyTab, on the channel sales, like how do you advise founders to manage channel sales? Like, it's one thing to get the integration going and start and have month 1 be super successful, but you want month 16 to be successful. So like, what is the cadence of staying in touch and managing and talking about deliverables and attribution and all these things? Like, how do you structure that with such a small sales team, but a robust, prolific channel sales organization?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we did it both on the product side and on the go-to-market side. So from a product perspective, we always wanted to be their first partner to do something. So we made it known to them, hey, this alpha, we want to be your testing partner for it. Hey, we're getting a lot of feedback from our merchants that they really need an integration to this aspect of your product suite in order for this to be powerful. Let's give them that feedback, show them how we can do it together with them. Hey, let's include SpeedyTab as the first partner to offer this. And so that was really powerful on the product side. From the sales side and from the go-to-market side, I always, not to be trite, but it's do things that don't scale really well. Like with them as a partner, I want the top sales reps to have our team on speed dial. And personally know them, personally send them gifts, have relationships with them, because partnerships are all driven by the relationships that you can have at the top at the end of the day, and that will trickle down to everyone else. And so we were in the Toast offices often. We were at the sales kickoffs. We were at the regional team meetings. We were in people's faces all the time with how we can help them make more money. The same way as a brand, it's not about how SpeedyTab can do anything. It's how we can make our customer the hero.
Totally.
In this case, it's how we can help our partner be the hero to their customers. And so it's always about putting this other person that you're meeting with, position them as the hero. And founders sometimes don't look at who's sitting across from them enough and put themselves in their shoes to understand, here's how I make them the hero.
I think that's fantastic advice. And I think all founders should listen to that, is make the person on the other side of the table as you the hero. Win, win, win. Think about channel sales, and then think about the continuity of that relationship across not just one channel sale, but many channel sales and multi-year, hopefully, partnership. So there's a lot of great companies we've talked about: Toast, SpeedyTab, your integration partners. Ultimately, you were acquired, and you went through an acquisition process. Maybe you could share a little bit about that, what that was like, what went through your head, how founders should think about that, and maybe a little bit about your experience at the acquirer.
Yeah. So I guess to zoom out, COVID struck. And I think COVID did one of 2 things to startups at that time. It either crushed you or it catapulted you.
Totally.
And we were super fortunate and lucky that it catapulted us. And at that time, it was like everything, everywhere, all at once, right? Overnight success that was 7 years in the making already, because every restaurant shut down. Everyone could only order through online ordering and app ordering. And we were just inundated with merchants. And that was a blessing for us. And that allowed us some great growth at that time and some great opportunities. So COVID hits. And then for us, not only did that allow customer growth, but we examined channel growth. And now we're beyond POS, and we're looking at other players who can leverage our platform the most in the thousands. So at this point, we had come out also with a developer API. And this really allowed third parties to build on top of our infrastructure, our shopping cart, our POS integrations, our menu management, inventory management, all these aspects, especially for enterprise. If they wanted to build something on their own, they already had their own application, they wanted to embed ordering within it, things like that. And so we knew at that time there's a handful of players with thousands, if not tens of thousands of restaurants on them. I didn't know that Wix had 600,000 restaurants, actually. but
Wow.
thousands upon thousands of restaurants on them. And how can we empower them to offer SpeedyTab in a way that can make everyone more successful? So make their business successful, offer new first-party offerings to their customers. And Wix was one of those. I saw Wix with, having tens of thousands of restaurant clients that had websites, but those websites need first-party ordering.
Right.
Those first-party ordering sites need point-of-sale integration.
Right.
They need state management. They need loyalty and rewards. They need lots of aspects that we brought to the table. And so for us, it was really an approach of, here's how we can empower you to offer this to your customers. And I think that's a lot of how M&A begins oftentimes with this. Here's the way that we can empower you to drive revenue. And what if we could take you from X in revenue to Y in revenue? What kind of impact does that have on your business at the tens of thousands of restaurant scale? And I think for them, when looking at that opportunity and looking at the market at that time, they felt like, okay, well, there's probably something more strategic that could be done here. And that's when we received our LOI and began our M&A discussions.
And so you ultimately went down that path and you were acquired by Wix and you joined as VP or GM of restaurants. And then you were there for 4 years?
Yep.
I think I saw on your vlog you had a Wix Miami office at one point. But tell us about, from Bootstrapped founder, being in Fort Lauderdale, South Florida, traveling all over, building, a company that's acquired by Wix, which is a global brand. And you know the scale of it better than anyone. But walk us through how it went from bootstrap startup life to massive powerhouse that's only continuing to grow.
Yeah, I think there's nothing that really prepares any startup founder for everything involved within the M&A process.
So there's no guides or M&A 101 that's going to work, or this podcast is called Playbook, so no playbook M&A.
I'm sure that there's a lot of traditional playbook M&A, but from a founder mentality perspective, nothing prepared me for that moment other than going through it. We had M&A discussions. I'm sure every company that's out there that goes through growth has different opportunities as they scale, different discussions that they have along the way and things that they consider. But once you're dealing with true share purchase agreement and everything involved with, especially a NASDAQ publicly traded M&A deal, all the due diligence that ensues, the legal work that ensues, I feel like there's probably been many books written on that process, but nothing other than living it really prepares you for going through it. And as far as like the afterlife, there's a joy in the journey for me. I think for a lot of founders, there's 0 to 1 is unlike any other part of the journey and is the hardest often part, but to me is the most fun. And I think from there going into the 6,000 person publicly traded company is definitely a different lifestyle and a different velocity through which you're working. And I think being a global brand has pros and cons. And so for us, it was really learning how to operate within such a global brand. It's headquartered in Tel Aviv. You have clients across 180 countries. You have 6,000 employees. You have different verticals. And so then it's much more about learning what does decision-making look like within such a large organization. What are the impacts on a 600,000 plus restaurant platform that we need to take into consideration, things that we never focused on within a US only multi-thousand customer startup. And so your way of thinking really shifts from that standpoint. And I think there's really some great things that can come out of that, but also obviously some fair amount of like bureaucratic things and things that Brian Chesky wants to talk about oftentimes that Airbnb and other large publicly traded companies see. And I think that's natural and probably par for the course within growing kind of this last iteration of large companies. I'm not sure if the new iteration of companies will see that same headcount growth that this last legacy round did.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, on headcount growth, like Wix, I think just also acquired Base 44 a couple months ago, which is I think it'd be great for Wix's stock price on a use base 44. I think Mayor is awesome, but it's just interesting to see the scale of Wix and how acquisitive they can be for the right strategic groups. And so you hired people at Wix. You were responsible for hiring, and anything else, or what were you doing mostly at Wix post acquisition?
Yeah, Wix, it was really a focus on a lot of what we did at SpeedyTab really well, and that was integrating with partners that could make our merchants more successful, drive revenue, and create a better guest experience for their customers. So that looked like a lot of POS integration, delivery integration, off-premise integration. It's really about building a great ecosystem at Wix for our merchants that can help them make more money.
Great company, and it seems like it was a great landing place for SpeedyTab. So just on the M&A front, I know there's no playbook, but we both know tons of founders. I think that we're kind of entering a consolidation period in the market where there probably will be a lot of interesting startup acquisitions. Do you think the startup founders that you know today should just sell, keep going, or I don't know if you angel invest or what your portfolio looks like, but how do you give advice to your friends or community of founders that might be in similar positions in 2025, 2026?
Should I put my startup founder hat on for this?
I think you're a startup founder, so I put the startup founder hat on.
Yeah. It behooves founders at all times, and by the way, it's also their fiduciary responsibility to listen to all opportunities in front of them. And you have to understand the macro.
Right.
The macro drives pretty much everything. You can survive through poor macros, but you can thrive in great macros.
Right.
And so founders have to open their eyes and kind of sometimes take their view out of their own product and world for a second to understand the bigger picture and how that can impact whether they should make acquisitions themselves or they should look at their own exit opportunities, but really having a good feel for here's what's going on in the world around me. And sometimes as founders, as a first-time founder, I certainly never thought about that. The only thing I thought about was this customer obsession and a product obsession. But hey, by the way, the entire world and economy is going on around me.
I 100% agree, and Twitter is not the real world, so don't take macro specifically from Twitter. We have to actually go out, talk to customers, talk to people, and do it on a higher level than that. So a couple months ago, you left Wix. You did your tour of duty, and now you're thinking about next big steps. We're sitting here in a studio in Brickell in Miami. You're choosing to stay in Florida, I believe. You're a Florida guy, Gator guy.
By the way, Miami.
Miami guy, not Fort Lauderdale.
This goes back to like the famous clip you've heard, like Miami isn't Florida.
Correct.
It's Miami is Miami, and it's its own passported city at this point. Like it should be its own nation.
I would love for us to be like a capitalist economic free zone. No state income tax, no federal income tax, no sales tax, no property tax, just money flowing. But what does Miami look like in 2026 to you from an entrepreneur, investor, operator perspective? The city, I think, has evolved. I think you were having a conversation the other day with some friends that there's a lot of interesting people down here. So what's your take on 2026 Miami?
To me, it's the best time to be in Miami. I mean, I was born here, raised here, spent most of my life here. And I think people want to look at the things Miami isn't because it's easy to pick on Miami, right? It's easy to pick on the crypto bros and the flash and the watches and all the things that people want to headline in the news.
Yeah, but when the Lamborghini rentals are usually fake, and you can tell by the Delaware, Maryland license plates.
But now, I mean, I always say people can get out of Miami whatever you want from Miami. Like if you want that flashy life, you can find it. But guess what? If you want people that are building great companies, you can find them too. And if you want great engineering talent, you can find or recruit that also. You want great capital allocators, you can find that also. And so to me, it's a period in time in Miami's life cycle where we're on this next exciting leg up of the growth curve. And so it's the world is our oyster, Miami kind of time for all the builders here.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think the capital markets are here, specifically at the early stage. I don't know what your plan is on raising capital in the future, but I think there's tons of pre-seed, seed, family offices. I think we got to work on like the Series B plus, the growth capital. But per what we were saying earlier, you may not need that growth capital in these new environments. And I think a lot of growth equity investors are probably underwater based on the valuations and where public markets versus private markets intersect. And so, for seed strapping or early stage, I think it's a really great place, in global scale. But it's up to people like us to go make that happen. So you're thinking about something new, you're starting something new, entrepreneurial minded. What does 2026 look like for Adam?
It's an exciting time to build, right? I think even if you're fully employed at a 9 to 5 job, you should be trying to build something for yourself right now, even if it's just to learn. And so since leaving Wix, probably have spent a lot of time in the nonprofit sector, with a charity here that's near and dear to my heart called YMU, Young Musicians Unite. We put music programs in Miami-Dade County public schools. Often the arts and music programs are the first things to be cut. And so we work with the school districts to actually put curriculum, teachers, instruments in schools. And so part of working with nonprofits has led me to understand all the problems that nonprofits face. And I think that's always a great company lesson, right? Like you talk about Twitter sphere, X being not the real world. There's so many people that just say, okay, like give me a great idea to go build $1 billion company right now, or where can I apply this to go build something? What problems do you have that you want to solve for yourself? Like go out, leave your desk, leave your screen, get out in the real world. And what are your own problems that you want to fix for yourself? And so lately, the problems I've been facing have been like, man, how can I use AI to do donor management better? How can I prospect new donors better? How can I manage the events and ticketing that we have right now for our nonprofit better? How can I consolidate all of this into one platform a bit better? So that's where I'm putting a lot of my efforts right now, using a lot of the new tools that are out there to build something that can help me solve the problems I'm having within this nonprofit space.
I love it. So nonprofit's obviously a huge category. I think there's some like SaaS 2.0 players out there, but overall, is your bet now on vertical SaaS or vertical AI, where you're hyper-focused on one specific category and mapping the ontology of that? Or how do you see this AI market for startup founders today? Is it being an expert in one specific thing and then growing from there? Or is it solving a personal pain point? Walk me through like the vertical AI.
Yeah, that's the biggest question of the moment, right? And I don't think anyone knows for certain just how much are the large LLMs going to dominate this themselves at some point. But yeah, I have a belief that over the course of the next decade, there's still enough nuance within verticals that there's going to be whole really successful companies built that are vertical specific. And so I believe that you need that situational fluency to really understand, here's how we can implement this in the right way and benefit, our customers the right way. And so I think it comes down to really like niching into this and implementing it in a way that says, here's the concise problems that need to be solved. Here's how I would like to solve them. And these are the tools I'm going to use to solve. I'm not sure how much of the hype cycle of everything has to be agentic workflows necessarily is like the end all be all for everything. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I don't know, but my hypothesis for the time being is I want to focus on a niche that has specific industry knowledge and situational fluency that's needed to get those workflows. People talk about forward deployed engineers and that kind of aspect of AI. And I think that's what most founders should do. And they should be that themselves, right? Like be your own forward deployed engineer. You need to be in that organization, in that industry, understanding the pain points so that you can be the one that's leading the way in terms of how you're going to solve the problem.
Yeah, it's like founder market fit. We're in Miami, so there's one founder in Miami that moved to Miami only because his first biggest customer was in Miami. So he just got an apartment next to the customer's site and just lived there. And like that's, I need to map my customers' needs and solve their business problems. And that's that. But yeah, founder market fit I think is like super necessary because you can't just chat GPT your way to building a business model, understanding a market, like super research or whatever is not going to do the job of actually having the human relationships with people that are having the problem or having the problem yourself. But I do think we'll get to a point where like agentic payments will hit nonprofits and they're like nonprofits will need to accept agents paying them in
Oh,
some capacity. So like AI native is coming. It's going to come pretty fast.
I think it's going to be a great thing for the nonprofits.
For
I
sure.
mean, to be able to prospect automatically or find donors that fit the profile that you're looking for. I mean, there's tons of workflows that work really well for the nonprofit segment. And I think it's, again, goes back to like win-win-win. Like, can I build something that's going to benefit this nonprofit, that's going to benefit their staff, the donors themselves that want to find something like this, and ourselves as a company.
So it's going to be an exciting couple of quarters to watch Adam in the nonprofit space. We're going to keep track very closely and publish later about what does come out. As we wrap up here, I want to do like a quick little rapid fire. And, the podcast is called The Playbook. And so I'm trying to think about like, what is one framework that you still use every day? Do you have a framework or something that settles you or is a routine for you?
I think I just try and learn something new every day. And that can come from a number of different channels. But the main thing as a founder is you need to constantly be evolving and learning. And that can be very domain specific, or that could be more of a general focus, but you need to be consuming as much as possible. One of my favorite questions at SpeedyTab when we were hiring was kind of like, what do you read every day? It could be a blog, it could be a book, but how do you learn? And I think that's one of the main things as founders that I hope everyone else is doing is like every day you should be consuming something new, learning something new. And that was always a good hiring tell for us. Like you're coming into the restaurant focused software. Do they read anything about what's going on in this space? Do they know? So yeah.
It's definitely, that's a great one. I mean, you are consistent. I know that you did like drone videos at one point where it was how many days in a row did you went out?
365 days every day for a full year. I went out physically, flew the drone, made a video for it, posted the video. It's almost a gamification accountability aspect that builds after some time. But I think there's a certain level of dedication that founders have. And when I didn't have that for the startup anymore, I needed to apply that to somewhere else. And I chose to apply that to drones for a year. But I think, hobbies can also tell a lot about founders. And are you willing to go kind of like the extra mile and be different? Like people looked at that and said, that's really weird. Some people said that's weird. But that's how founders are. We're weird people.
Yeah,
You have to be obsessive.
Yeah.
You have to be obsessive about things to a weird point, and I have no shame about that.
I always thought that was a cool story. That was one of the first stories you told me when I met you in Miami. How about a decision that looked crazy but paid off?
Ooh. I mean, the first one that comes to mind was really we started gaining traction. We expanded into Latin America because what company startup in Miami is oftentimes looking at Latin America. And we had started gaining some traction in Latin America. We got Juan Valdez, for instance, like the Starbucks of Latin America as a customer. We were growing. But from a product standpoint, given our size, it was too much of a burden for us to continue to carry. And we decided to cut LATAM out of the picture altogether, give up the revenue that we were earning, and only focus on North America. And a lot of folks wanted us to continue pushing across LATAM as a larger market for us to continue to drive revenue through. And we said, no, we need to narrow our focus and actually be better just within the US. And so I think that was one of the decisions that we made that a lot of people raise an eyebrow at. But for us, it worked out really well. I think one of the mistakes founders make a lot is trying to do too much too soon. We talked about Toast earlier in the podcast. They IPO'd with only focusing on restaurants within the United States. Founders are so quick to go to other countries, other markets, other segments. Toast didn't go into retail. They didn't go into convenience. They didn't go into the UK or Canada, not until post-IPO. And it shows that you can build a multi-billion-dollar company with a really narrow, strict focus.
Sometimes it can be a red flag. It's like your customers in America don't want you, or it's too competitive, or you can't get the pricing that you need. How about just quickly on this migration? I think you mentioned earlier, but the moment you knew Miami could compete as a global city anywhere, did you always know that, or was this something recent?
No, I think from SpeedyTab's founding, being down here, there's always been a handful of companies at each stage that have done really well that kind of fly under the radar. and their stories don't get told. And I think the media and the flywheel around SF and New York tell one story. But there's a lot of undercover stories within Miami of really successful companies in software that have exited and the founders remain around. They invest in new companies. And we're starting to see more and more of that within the ecosystem here. And I think that's what has to drive Miami to that next level, is more of this flywheel of really successful company, founders and early team members all exit, become angel investors. They lead the way to invest in new companies. And I think as the Miami flywheel continues to spin faster, you're only going to see an acceleration of founders moving here, sophisticated capital coming here. And people forget that, Silicon Valley, it's taken decades.
Yep.
And in Miami, that it's only been a matter of years. And so it's not an overnight acceleration that is just going to explode within Miami. And sometimes maybe we don't do the best job of telling that story and setting expectations too high. But it's a process, and it's not an overnight activity. And the investors, builders, the general public should understand that it's not going to be, a 2-year, 3-year, 5-year thing. This is a decades-long process, and I think we're in the right place within this decades-long evolution.
Yeah, 1,000%. And I think also a lot of founders have been under the radar because they've been locked up and they're post-exit.
If I see founders at too many networking things, I'm like, what are you? Yeah. That's a bad, talk about red flags. If you're a founder at a lot of networking events.
I host hundreds of networking events, and I totally agree. Go to the things that are relevant to you if you have personal relationships with the host, or you need to get something out of the event. But
or your customers are going to be there.
Is just, it's a little scary. There's better use of time. Okay.
And I think one last thing.
Sure.
When I grew up, and sound like an old man, back in my day in Miami, when I grew up in Miami, the only industry that was here was tourism and hospitality.
Right.
And when I graduated, and it was 2009, the only people that stayed were tourism and hospitality folks. And now, if you look at the industry in Miami, 15 years later, it's incredible. The delta between where Miami was and today in that time frame is exceptional.
It's insane.
And so if you take that and apply that to the next 15 years, we're in a really good place.
That's my bet. A founder or trend you'd go long on today? Is there a founder you're tracking closely, or a trend outside of generic AI that you think is worth going long on?
Founder that I'd go long on today. Yeah, I think we'll stick in Miami. We'll go with Austin Bunsen. He's doing something now that's actually a bit different from all the agentic hype that's out there, and I always like that.
I believe the company's called Access Control.
Yeah, Access Grid.
Access Grid.
Yeah. So I think what he's doing at Access Grid is very unique. I like a Red Sea, Blue Sea approach. Again, I'm going to build something that everyone in this country uses. We all have a key fob or key card that we're using to enter the workplace, usually on a day-to-day basis. And how do we replace that? Just use NFC on our phone.
We'll get Austin on this pod. And then last thing, kind of like a note to self, but like you mentioned old man. You're not an old man. I see you. He's super fit. We're doing like Air Lab and these. You want to give a plug to Air Lab?
Air Lab. Shout out Air Lab.
Air Lab's the best. We do workout classes there. It's like you're training at 10,000 feet. Love Air Lab. What would you tell your 25-year-old self? And as a founder, to other founders that are 25 right now, what would you tell them?
I mean, what I needed to tell myself and what I did tell myself every day was to not give up. I think it's very easy, especially in certain circles, to read stories constantly of people getting funded, to read stories of huge successes, of these hyper-growth companies. Everyone's posting launch videos that they've raised huge rounds, and it's all you see is the success. And it reminds me of that's what social media is designed to do, right? Is like tell all these great success stories. And that can be really disheartening for a lot of founders that are in the trough of sorrow stage of startup world. And so to every founder, it's really about have your head down and continue to work hard and not give up. It's easier said than done, especially when you're not getting the product market fit you're wanting, or you lost that big customer. But there's a resiliency within founders, and I think the best founders are oftentimes the most stubborn, to an extent of, I know that this is going to work and we will get there. And you have to make pivot, like as we pivoted along the way. So you can't be stubborn to the extent that you refuse to change your product direction, but you have to be stubborn to the extent of, I refuse to give up. And I think the best compliments I ever got were, Adam is the most persistent SOB that I've ever met. And I think as a founder, that's the kind of mentality that you have to have.
Love that. Adam Garfield, proof you can build, scale, and exit in Miami. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Thanks, man. Pleasure.